Hey friends, tonight we're going to wander together into the dim-lit world of the Middle Ages. Not the shining halls of kings, nor the thunder of armies, but something softer, stranger, and maybe even more familiar. The holidays and festivals that once marked the rhythm of the medieval year. These celebrations were more than just moments of joy. They were the pulse of life itself, guiding people through the turning of the seasons, through hunger and harvest, darkness and light. They were a way to make sense of the world when the nights grew long and the fields lay bare. And some of them will feel familiar. Others, well, they might surprise you, or make you laugh, or leave you wondering how such customs ever came to be. The world of medieval holidays was a place where religion, superstition, and revelry collided in ways that were sometimes beautiful, sometimes bizarre, and always deeply human. Before we begin, let's make sure you're settled. Maybe dim the lights if you haven't already. If you've got a candle, strike a match and let it flicker quietly beside you, the kind of glow that makes shadows dance softly on the walls. If you prefer, close your eyes and imagine the smell of beeswax or tallow filling a small, smoky room. Let your phone rest on the nightstand for now. If you like a bit of white noise, maybe turn on a fan or set a fireplace track humming in the background. This isn't just about listening, but about resting, letting the story move gently through your mind, like a lullaby from centuries past. And if you're new here, welcome. If you've wandered with us before, welcome back. I like to imagine where you are, right now, as you listen. Maybe you're in a busy city apartment, where neon glows faintly through the curtains. Maybe you're in a quiet house tucked into the countryside, where the only sounds outside are crickets and the rustle of leaves. Perhaps you're curled up in a dorm room, or lying in a hotel bed halfway across the world, drifting into sleep in a place that isn't quite home. Wherever you are, I'm glad you're here. And if you find this kind of calm history helps you rest, you're always welcome to subscribe. No pressure, only if it feels right. There are many more nights ahead, and many more stories to share, all under the gentle glow of candlelight. Now tonight's story. As autumn rolls in on our modern calendar, many of us are looking ahead to Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. Pumpkins appear on doorsteps, supermarkets fill with turkeys, and strings of lights begin to creep out of boxes. But what about the people who lived centuries before us? What did the medieval world celebrate when the leaves turned and the nights grew long? They had their own versions, festivals that were sometimes deeply solemn, sometimes rowdy and wild. October's shadows brought All Hallows Eve and All Saints' Day, with prayers for the dead bell ringing through the night, and children knocking at doors for soul cakes. In the chill of late autumn, harvest feasts filled the bellies of villagers, echoing faintly what we now call Thanksgiving. And in December, Christmas stretched not just for a day, but for 12 full nights of feasting, mischief, and revelry, with lords of Misrule and disguises that blurred the line between carnival and worship. These are the echoes of our modern holidays. But the medieval versions had their own strange flavors, some playful, some unsettling. And along the way, we'll stumble into even stranger celebrations. The Feast of Fools, where priests turned cathedrals upside down. May Day, when villagers danced around maypoles and sang fertility songs. And Midsummer, when bonfires blazed through the night, and young people leapt the flames for luck. So tonight, let's wander through the medieval calendar together. We'll start in the fading days of October, when All Hallows Eve loomed large, and follow the people of the Middle Ages through their strangest and most spirited feasts. Settle back, let the lights fade, let your breath slow. The story is about to begin. You wake to the sound of wind pressing against wooden shutters. The light that seeps through the cracks is dim, a pale grey that tells you morning has come, but the sun is struggling to break through the autumn sky. The air inside the cottage is cold. Your breath fogs faintly as you push back a rough wool blanket, patched in places where it has worn thin. The smell of damp earth lingers, mixed with smoke from last night's fire, now reduced to a few faint embers in the hearth. Somewhere outside, You hear the shuffle of boots in the mud, a cough, and the creak of a wooden cart rolling over uneven ground. The harvest is done, the fields are bare stubble, the last sheaves already threshed and stored. And now, with the crops safe for winter, the village waits for the darker season. It is late October, and though the word Halloween is not yet on anyone's lips, the people around you are preparing for All Hallows Eve. The bells of the church will toll tomorrow night, long into the darkness, summoning prayers for the souls of the dead. Families will bake small cakes, soul cakes, round and spiced, each one eaten with a prayer offered for a departed loved one. Children, barefoot and wrapped in rough cloaks, will wander from door to door asking for these cakes, not with the playful tricks of modern times, but with promises of prayer. A soul cake, one for a prayer, one for the dead. The thought gives you a small shiver. Death feels closer here, more ordinary, more constant than in the world you know. Graveyards are not quiet lawns, but crowded places where bones sometimes rise through the soil after heavy rains. The villagers believe that the boundary between the living and the dead is thinner in these days, that the prayers and the tolling bells matter, perhaps even that the dead walk a little, unseen, in the long shadows of autumn. You wrap a cloak around your shoulders and step outside. The chill cuts sharp against your face, and the village looks worn and tired after the harvest. Smoke rises from thatched chimneys, curling upward before the wind scatters it. A woman carries a basket of turnips, hollowed and carved with crude faces, not for decoration but for warding off spirits. Their jagged features catch the morning light, and for a moment you almost feel those hollow eyes staring back. At the edge of the green, a group of children chase one another, their laughter cutting through the heavy air. They're practicing songs, chants they'll use tomorrow when they go souling. Their voices are high and uneven, but there's a strange sweetness to it, joy tangled with solemn duty. Behind them the church looms, its bell, heavy and ancient, waits to mark the night, when every clang will be a prayer, a reminder, and perhaps a ward against the restless dead. As you stand in the middle of this little village, you can feel it, the weight of the season, the hush before the dark, the curious blend of faith and fear that shapes these days. For the medieval world, this was no child's holiday. It was a moment to reckon with the unseen, to share food with the poor, to remember the dead, and to hold close the living, as the days grew short and the nights pressed long. And as the wind rises again, whistling through the bare branches, you can almost sense what they felt, that the veil between worlds might indeed be thinner here, in the last days of October. The hearth has been coaxed back to life, smoke curling into the rafters as the fire warms a blackened iron pot. You step inside, and the smell of baking bread hits you almost at once, a smell so ancient, so essential, that it feels like the heart of the home itself. The woman of the cottage is kneading dough on a worn wooden board, her hands moving with quiet rhythm, her sleeves rolled back and dusted with flour. This is no ordinary bread. It is for the season, for All Hallows Eve. Small, round loaves, soul cakes, will be baked from it, flavored with spices, if the household can afford them, though more often they are plain, marked with a simple cross cut into the dough. Each cake, once baked, carries with it a promise. For every one eaten, a prayer will be said for a soul in purgatory, helping it along on its long journey towards salvation. The kitchen is poor, its walls blackened from years of smoke, but it is alive this morning. Chickens scratch near the doorway, and a child sits by the hearth, watching the flames while trying to keep warm. In the pot above the fire, a stew bubbles gently, root vegetables, perhaps a scrap of salted meat, the remnants of the harvest season, stretched into a meal that must last. A basket of turnips rests in the corner, some hollowed and ready to be lit with tallow candles. Their carved faces are rough and lopsided, but the intent is clear: to keep wandering spirits at bay. Long before pumpkins became the lanterns of Halloween, It was these pale, knobbly turnips that glowed in the dark. Carried through the village lanes, they would cast strange, flickering faces into the night. You sit on a bench and watch as the bread dough rises near the fire, covered with a cloth. The woman pauses to wipe her hands and speaks softly about the night ahead. She tells you of prayers to be whispered, of bells that will toll until dawn, and of the poor who will knock at the door tomorrow, asking for cakes, offering prayers in return. The exchange feels both practical and sacred, a mixture of charity, tradition, and the hope that good deeds ripple outward into eternity. For a moment you consider what it means. In your world, Halloween is about costumes, sweets, and laughter. Here, the laughter is gentler, mingled with fear and reverence. Children still knock at doors, but they are not asking for candy. They are bargaining with eternity, their small voices carrying the weight of prayers for the dead. The stew thickens, filling the room with the smell of onions and leeks, earthy and sharp. A jug of ale is set out, cloudy and home-brewed, to be shared later with neighbors when they gather after Vespers. For in the medieval world, food is never only about feeding the body. It is about binding the community, about marking the rhythm of life and death, about offering a little comfort against the coming dark. Outside, the wind picks up again, rattling the shutters. The woman glances toward the sound and murmurs a blessing under her breath, half prayer, half habit. The firelight glows on her face as she turns back to the bread, pressing the dough once more with strong, sure hands. And you realize that this kitchen, smoky, humble, filled with bread, stew, and whispered prayers, is where the heart of All Hallows' Eve beats. Not in the church bells alone, nor in the graveyards, but here, where families bake and share, where prayers are folded into food, and where the living remember the dead with every bite. The cakes will soon be ready, their golden tops shining in the firelight, waiting to be handed out tomorrow. For tonight and tomorrow, the village will eat and pray, and the lines between the living and the departed will blur for just a little while. The morning deepens, and as you step back outside, the village begins to stir in earnest. The air is sharp and cool, your breath rising in small clouds, and everywhere you look, people are wrapped in layers of wool, linen, and fur. The harvest is over, and the days have turned colder. In the Middle Ages, clothing was not just a matter of fashion, it was survival. You tug your cloak tighter. It is heavy, woven from rough wool, its edges worn but serviceable. Beneath it, a tunic of undyed linen reaches to your knees, cinched at the waist with a simple cord. Your legs are covered with hose, patched at the knees, and your feet are wrapped in leather shoes, cracked from wear but softened by years of walking muddy paths. Around you, men and women are dressed much the same. Layers of thick wool against the chill, colors muted, earthy browns, faded greens, a rare splash of red or blue for those who can afford dyes. For most, clothing here is simple and practical. A woman passes by, carrying a basket on her hip, her kirtle dragging in the mud. Over it, she wears an apron stained with flour, a wimple covering her hair. A man wrestles with a cart, his tunic belted tightly, a short cloak flapping in the wind. Children are bundled in whatever scraps of wool can be spared, some wrapped in cloaks far too big for their small frames. But there are hints of something else, something playful, even a little unsettling. At the edge of the green, you notice a group of older boys preparing for tomorrow night. One has fastened a crude mask to his face, carved from wood and daubed with soot, to give it a grim, hollow look. Another pulls a hood low over his eyes, a ragged cloak draped across his shoulders, in a parody of a priest's robe. They laugh as they chase each other, but you can see how, in the dark of night, these disguises might unsettle anyone who opened their door. This too is part of All Hallows tradition. Disguises, masks, and strange costumes were not unknown in the medieval world. Sometimes it was simple mischief, villagers cloaking themselves in anonymity for the night. Other times, the disguises carried meaning, a way to trick or confuse wandering spirits believed to walk among the living when the veil between worlds thinned. A mask could hide you from the dead, or make you appear as one of them. In wealthier towns, guilds sometimes paraded in costumes, playing out small pageants connected to the saints or to the turning seasons. In the countryside, it was rougher, more rustic, an old cloak turned inside out, a mask cut from a turnip or carved from wood, a bit of soot to make the face unfamiliar. The line between play and fear was thin. You watch as the boys toss their masks aside and run off toward the fields, their laughter echoing. A woman passing nearby shakes her head with a smile, muttering that the devil finds work for idle hands. Still, there is no real anger in her voice, only the weary acceptance that mischief has its season, and this is it. The church, of course, frowned on such disguises, preferring the faithful to keep their focus on prayers and vigils. But in villages like this, where old beliefs lingered alongside new, it was hard to draw strict lines. People prayed in the church by day, and by night they lit candles in hollowed turnips, wore cloaks and masks, and sang songs that were half holy and half folk tale. As you adjust your cloak against the wind, you can feel how clothing here is not just fabric. It is warmth. It is identity. It is tradition. Every stitch and every patch tells a story of survival. And for one night of the year, it becomes something more, a shield against the dark, a disguise from spirits, a playful mask for Misrule. Tomorrow night, the village will be filled with such sights: children begging for soul cakes in ragged cloaks, young men in masks laughing too loudly, and flickering turnip lanterns casting strange shadows over it all. It is a costume party, unlike the bright, playful Halloweens, you know, but in its own way just as full of imagination. The day grows brighter, though the sun remains hidden behind a veil of grey clouds. You find yourself drawn to the village green, where a group of men are working together at the side of a small thatched building. A cask is being rolled into place, its wooden staves groaning as it thuds onto the packed earth. From the smell alone, you know what it contains: ale, thick, yeasty, cloudy, and utterly essential to life in the Middle Ages. In this world, no one trusts water. Not really. Wells can be foul, rivers tainted, streams brimming with unseen dangers. To drink straight water is often to gamble with illness. Instead, people drink ale, brewed weak for children and daily use, and stronger for feasts. It is a constant presence in every household. Even monasteries keep their own breweries, where monks perfect their craft and experiment with herbs and spices. You take a wooden cup from a smiling man who offers it freely, perhaps testing the brew, perhaps simply eager to share. The ale is warm, unfiltered, with a grainy taste that sits heavy on the tongue. It is not the crisp drink of modern pubs, but it is nourishing, filling, and most importantly, safe. Nearby, women are busy with another drink of the season: cider. Apples, gathered from the last of the harvest, are pressed into a cloudy, tart liquid. Children sip the sweet version before it ferments, while the adults eye the barrels that will soon bubble into stronger fare. In some places, pears join the press, giving the air a faint, fragrant sharpness. As you sip, you remember that festivals like All Hallows Eve are not just about prayer and remembrance. They are about gathering, about filling bellies and lifting spirits before the long winter. A feast without drink would be unthinkable. The casks rolled onto the green are as important as the soul cakes cooling on the hearth. Someone offers you a taste of a spiced concoction, a mixture of warmed ale with a pinch of ginger and a splash of honey. It is rare, for spices are expensive, but even a little is enough to transform the drink into something festive. You feel it burn gently as it slides down, chasing away the chill that clings to your bones. In wealthier households, such drinks would be richer still, mulled with cloves, nutmeg, or cinnamon brought from distant lands. But here, even a trace of ginger is a treasure. A boy scurries past with a wooden jug, carrying ale to the workers repairing the churchyard wall. An older man sits nearby, sipping slowly, his face ruddy from years of the same routine. He nods toward the cask and tells you with the authority of experience that no night of bells and prayers can pass without a good drink to warm the throat. Faith may guide the soul, but ale keeps the body steady. The air is filled with the low murmur of voices, the clink of cups, and the dull thud of mallets as barrels are tapped and tested. For a moment, the village feels alive with anticipation. Tonight, the church will be filled with solemnity, but tomorrow, after the prayers, after the bell tolls, the people will feast. The casks will be opened, the cider shared, and the green will echo with laughter that blends reverence with relief. As you finish your cup, you notice how easily drink bridges gaps here. It is a gift between neighbors, a kindness for strangers, a bond that makes festivals possible. In a world where winters are long and food uncertain, ale and cider are not luxuries but anchors, comfort in the face of cold, community in liquid form. You hand back the cup, warmed by the drink, and by the thought that in this village, even the simplest cask carries with it the promise of fellowship. The barrels will stand ready through the season, their contents poured out for harvest feasts, vigils, and Christmas revels to come. The day is still young, but the rhythm of festival has already begun to pulse. Food, drink, prayer, and mischief. They all weave together here, preparing the village for the long night ahead. The wind tugs at your cloak as you leave the cluster of cottages and wander toward the edge of the village. The sound of voices fades behind you, replaced by the creak of bare branches and the whisper of leaves scudding along the path. Soon you reach the fields, and what you see tells you as much about medieval life as any feast or prayer could. The ground is churned and muddy, dotted with pale stubble where wheat once stood tall. The harvest has already been gathered, the sheaves cut, threshed and stored in barns or granaries. Here and there, a few villagers pick through what remains, gathering scraps, gleaning kernels left behind. For the poor, these last bits are precious. A handful of grain might mean bread on the table when winter grows lean. The air smells of damp soil and straw, a mixture that is both comforting and a little foreboding. The rhythm of the medieval year is written into these fields. The planting in spring, the long summer of tending, and now the final cutting in autumn. Every step of life bends toward this moment, for without it, there is nothing. Food is not a matter of convenience, but survival. A man passes you with a bundle of straw balanced across his shoulders. He nods as he walks, his face weathered, his tunic patched at the elbows. Behind him, a woman bends low, gathering what she can into a basket. Even in the wake of harvest, work continues. The fields must be cleared, tools mended, animals fed. There is no pause, only a shift in the kind of labor demanded. Yet despite the toil, there is also relief that the harvest is done, that the barns are stocked, that the worst fears of famine are at bay, at least for now. And so the festivals come. Llamas in August, celebrating the first loaves baked from new grain. Harvest feasts in September and October, with tables if not groaning, then at least modestly filled. And now All Hallows, a turning point that blends gratitude for the living with prayers for the dead. You crouch and run your fingers through the cold soil. It clings to your skin, rich and heavy. This earth is everything here. Bread, ale, fodder, hope. The villagers know it, and so they mark its cycles with ritual and prayer, blessing seeds in spring, holding processions in summer, giving thanks at harvest. Without these rhythms, the holidays would not exist. They are not inventions of leisure, but necessities of life. At the edge of the field, a scarecrow leans drunkenly, its straw body sagging in the damp air. Its tunic is ragged, its head a bundle of cloth tied with twine. Once it guarded the grain from crows, now it stands useless, a reminder of labor past. A boy throws a stone at it and laughs as it topples sideways. His mother scolds him, but even she smiles faintly at the sight. The season is over. the field can rest, and so for a while, can the people. As you look out across the empty land, you feel the weight of what the harvest means here. Every loaf of bread, every jug of ale, every soul cake cooling by the hearth, each one traces its life back to these muddy rows. And so when the villagers feast, they are not only celebrating abundance, they are honoring survival, giving thanks that once again, for another year, the earth has yielded enough to see them through. The wind shifts, carrying the faint sound of a bell from the church tower. Evening will come soon, and with it, the tolling that begins All Hallows Vigil. You turn back toward the village, the fields stretching behind you like a story half finished, waiting for spring to write its next chapter. By midday, the heart of the village is alive with noise. The market has opened, and the green that was quiet this morning is now crowded with stalls, carts, and voices rising into the cool autumn air. This is not a market of polished shops or tidy displays, but of rough tables, baskets, and blankets spread on the ground. Chickens cluck nervously in wicker cages, goats bleat, and the sharp smell of onions mixes with the sweeter scent of honey and baked bread. You move slowly through the crowd, your cloak brushing against others as people haggle and trade. Slowly through the crowd, your cloak brushing against others as people haggle and trade. A man in a patched cap holds up a skein of dyed wool, the red color faint but precious, arguing with a woman who clutches a handful of eggs. Barter is common here, coin is scarce, and neighbors know each other's needs. One family trades a wheel of soft cheese for a small sack of barley, another hands over a flask of ale in exchange for a clay pot, its surface rough but sturdy. Children dart between legs, chasing each other, and calling out songs they'll sing tomorrow night when they go souling. A baker stands proudly behind a tray of small round loaves, some already marked with the cross that turns them into soul cakes. The smell draws a crowd, though many hesitate, counting coins carefully, weighing the worth of prayers against the hunger in their bellies. A fiddler sits on a stool near the church wall, his bow scratching over the strings, offering a melody that dances above the hubbub. A hat lies at his feet, waiting for coins. People toss in whatever they can spare, for music is as much a part of festivals as bread and ale. The tune is simple but merry, and you find yourself swaying slightly as you walk. Nearby, a small stand offers candles, thick ones of beeswax for those who can afford them, thin tallow tapers for everyone else. The merchant explains that tomorrow night, every household will need light for the vigil, and for those who wish to set a candle in a window to guide wandering souls. The beeswax candles glow golden in the weak sunlight, their scent faintly sweet. The tallow ones, cheaper, already give off the faint tang of smoke and fat. At another stall, a man sells carved turnips, their hollowed faces grinning grotesquely. Some are simple, others elaborate, with crooked teeth and wide, staring eyes. They are not for play, but for protection, lanterns to ward off spirits. You watch as a woman buys one, tucking it carefully into her basket, the face staring up at you from between apples and onions. The market is not only for buying and selling, it is a place of news, gossip, and laughter. Two men argue loudly about the coming winter, one certain it will be harsh, the other scoffing that the signs point to a mild season. A girl whispers to her friend about a boy she hopes will notice her during the feast. An old woman mutters about the dangers of walking out after dark, her eyes darting toward the churchyard as though the dead might already be stirring. As you pass the stalls, you feel the rhythm of life here. Markets are more than trade. They are the pulse of the village, where neighbors see each other, where the threads of community weave tightly together. And on the eve of All Hallows, the market hums with both necessity and anticipation. By the time you reach the far end of the green, your ears are full of voices, your nose full of the mingling scents of bread, smoke, and livestock. The people are ready, in their own way. Tomorrow will bring prayers, bells, and feasts. But today belongs to the market, to the hum of barter, the warmth of shared ale, the chatter of voices filling the air, before the long, cold night arrives. As you leave the busy green behind, the path narrows and curves past the churchyard wall. The chatter of the market fades, replaced by a deeper stillness, broken only by the faint creak of the church door and the low coo of doves roosting in the eaves. Beyond the wall, rows of graves huddle together, marked with wooden crosses or simple stones, many leaning crooked after years of wind and rain. In this world, death is never far away. It lingers like a shadow over every family, every cottage, every festival. Life is fragile here, and illness comes suddenly, sometimes sweeping through whole villages, sometimes stealing one child, one mother, one neighbor in the course of a single night. The people of the Middle Ages know this with a clarity that your modern world rarely feels. You pause at the gate and watch as a priest, his robe patched and dark from years of wear, kneels beside a grave, murmuring prayers for a villager recently buried. A woman stands a little distance away, clutching a rosary, her face pale and lined. The earth at her feet is freshly turned, and the smell of damp soil rises sharp in the cool air. You don't need to ask whose grave it is. You can feel the answer in her posture, in the way she presses her fingers into the beads, as though each word, each breath is a lifeline. It is here that the meaning of All Hallows comes into sharp focus. This festival is not just about masks and soul cakes. It is about remembering, about holding on to the belief that prayers spoken by the living can ease the suffering of the dead, that the thin veil of autumn allows voices to carry just a little further, bridging the gap between this world and the next. The priest rises slowly, his knees stiff, and begins to toll a small handbell. The sound is thin but steady, a reminder of the great bell that will soon call the entire village to vigil. Each toll is a prayer, a summons, a plea for mercy. In the silence of the churchyard, it feels like the sound carries not just across the fields, but across unseen distances, toward the souls who wait in darkness. You step through the gate, and the woman looks up, her eyes wet but calm. She manages a small smile, the kind of weary kindness born of necessity. In this place, grief is not private. The whole village knows loss, and the whole village bears it together. Festivals in their way are as much for the living as for the dead. They offer a chance to gather, to eat, to sing, to remind one another that even as winter presses in, life continues. Beyond the graves, the church doors stand open, the faint smell of incense drifting out. Inside, candles flicker, their small flames trembling in the draught. You imagine the space filled tomorrow night, the benches crowded, voices rising in chant, the air thick with smoke, and the echo of prayers. For a moment, you can almost hear it, the drone of voices layered upon voices, the great bell booming overhead, the sense of time stretching thin as the living call out for the departed. In your world, holidays often bring a light-hearted escape from the serious weight of life. Here they do both. They bring laughter, ale, feasting, but also gravity, ritual, and remembrance. Illness and death are too close, too constant to be ignored. And so every feast, every holy day carries its shadow. The shadow is not meant to frighten, but to anchor, to remind the people of what matters, and of how thin the line is between this world and the next. As you step back from the churchyard, the wind rattles through the dry grass. The graves lean silently, their wooden crosses tilting as if bowing toward the earth. For the villagers, this is not a place of fear, but of connection, a reminder that their prayers matter, their rituals endure, and their festivals carry meaning far beyond the moment. The market noise drifts faintly on the wind again, mingling with the sound of the priest's bell. Two worlds side by side, the bustle of the living and the quiet of the dead. And tomorrow night, those worlds will meet, joined by bells, by prayers, by candles burning against the dark. From the churchyard you follow a narrow lane that leads past cottages and gardens, their last herbs hanging limp in the cold air. The scent of damp earth and wood smoke clings to everything, but here and there you catch a sharper smell, sage, rosemary, garlic, fennel. These plants are more than flavor for stews. In the medieval world, they are medicine, protection, and sometimes a touch of magic. You stop at the doorway of a small house where a woman stirs a pot filled not with food, but with a mixture of herbs steeping in warm water. Her hands move quickly, her eyes focused, as she mutters to herself about fever and chill. On a shelf above her hang bundles of dried plants, yarrow for bleeding, chamomile for sleep, mint for stomach pains. A mortar and pestle rest nearby, their surfaces worn smooth by years of grinding roots and seeds. Illness comes often here, and medicine is a patchwork of knowledge, part practical, part superstition, part faith. For a cough, garlic boiled in ale might be prescribed. For a fever, willow bark ground into a powder. For a child plagued by nightmares, a charm carved into wood, hung by the bedside. You watch as the woman strains the herbs into a clay cup, handing it to a weary-looking man who sits hunched on a stool. He drinks slowly, grimacing at the bitter taste. She places a hand on his shoulder and tells him to rest, then turns back to her work, already preparing another remedy. In her movements, you see both science and ritual, though neither word would have much meaning here. To her, it is simply knowledge passed down, shaped by trial and error, by prayer, by necessity. Beyond her cottage, you pass others where remedies take stranger forms. A child wears a small pouch of herbs around his neck, said to ward off evil spirits. A man ties a strip of parchment, inscribed with a Latin prayer, to his wrist, convinced it will keep plague at bay. At the edge of the village, someone has hung a branch of rowan above the door, a charm against witches and sickness alike. The church, too, plays its part in healing. Priests bless holy water, offer prayers for the sick, and prescribe pilgrimages to saints' shrines. A fragment of bone, a vial of oil, a scrap of cloth said to have touched a holy figure. These relics are believed to carry healing power. Whether the cure lies in the relic itself or in the faith it inspires, no one doubts that such things matter. Yet for all this, illness remains a constant presence. The people of the Middle Ages live with the knowledge that remedies may or may not work, that prayers may or may not be answered. Festivals then become more than distractions. They are a way of pushing back against despair, of reminding one another that life is not only sickness and loss. The very act of gathering, of eating, drinking, singing, becomes a medicine of its own. You think again of tomorrow night, of the bells that will toll through the darkness. Those bells are not only prayers for the dead, but protection for the living, a sound meant to drive away sickness, evil, and fear. In their echo, villagers will find comfort, believing that the tolling carries power beyond what any herb or charm could offer. As you walk back toward the center of the village, the air grows colder, the light beginning to fade. Smoke rises from chimneys, carrying with it the mingled scents of stew and herbs, of life and survival. Remedies and rituals, faith and fear, all are bound tightly together here. In your world, medicine is grounded in science, measured in tests and trials. Here it is a fragile weaving of knowledge and hope, stitched together with prayer. And though the cures may not always hold, the rituals give strength, the belief that something can be done, that illness is not faced alone. The path opens back onto the green, where voices rise again in laughter and chatter. Even as sickness lingers at the edges, the festival draws the people forward, offering them warmth, food, and a little light against the shadows. As evening nears, the village begins to quiet, not with sleep, but with a kind of expectancy. The bustle of the market fades, the laughter of children grows softer, and all eyes turn toward the church that looms at the center of it all. Its stone walls are darkened with age, its roof patched and mossy, but for the people here, it is the very heart of life. You walk slowly up the worn path toward the church doors. The building seems larger than it is, rising solemnly against the grey sky. Inside, the air is cool, damp with the scent of stone, wood, and incense that clings faintly to the walls. Candles flicker along the altar, their flames wavering, throwing shadows that stretch high into the beams above. Faith in this world is not an option, not a private choice. It is woven into the very fabric of life, from birth to death, from feast to famine. Every festival, every holiday, every moment of celebration is also an act of worship. To give thanks for a harvest is to give thanks to God. To remember the dead is to place them in God's mercy. To feast is not only to eat, but to honor creation and its giver. A priest, stooped and weary but steady in his step, prepares the space for tonight's vigil. He arranges books on the lectern, adjusts the altar cloth, and sets out a small silver bell. Tomorrow, the great bell in the tower will toll until the air itself seems to vibrate with its sound. Its voice will roll across the fields, echo through the cottages, and fill the ears of every villager. It is said that the ringing not only calls the faithful, but drives away spirits that wander when the veil grows thin. You sit on one of the hard wooden benches, the surface worn smooth by countless hands and knees. For a moment you imagine the space filled, villagers crowded together, cloaks drawn tight against the draught, voices raised in chant. The sound would not be polished or perfect, but layered, raw, and powerful. Men, women, and children, lifting words in unison, their breath clouding in the cold air as incense curls upward. Faith here is not abstract. It is tangible, felt in every sound and smell, every flicker of light. It is in the prayers whispered over graves, the blessing of bread at the table, the candles burning in windows on All Hallows night. Even fear, the fear of sickness, famine, death, is bound into it, transformed into ritual and meaning. The priest pauses in his work and looks at you with a tired smile. He speaks softly of tomorrow night, of how the people will come bearing soul cakes and candles, how they will pray for their dead until the small hours of the morning. He knows as they do that not every prayer will ease a soul, not every bell will banish fear. But he also knows that without these rituals, the weight of life would be heavier. Faith is not only about answers, it is about endurance, about carrying one another through the dark. As he turns back to his preparations, you step outside again. The air is colder now, the sky streaked with the faintest traces of dusk. From the tower above, the small bell tolls once, twice. Its sound thin but steady. Soon the great bell will join it, and the whole village will gather. You pause at the doorway, looking back at the dim interior, where candles still burn, and you feel it clearly. Faith is not just the frame of these festivals, it is the heart. Without it, the feasts would be only meals, the markets only trade, the songs only noise. With it, every moment becomes part of a rhythm larger than the village, larger than life itself. The wind rises, carrying the faint echo of the bell across the fields. Tomorrow, that sound will swell into a chorus, binding the people together in prayer, in remembrance, and in hope. And as the shadows lengthen, you sense what they must have felt, that in this world, surrounded by uncertainty, faith is the strongest lantern against the dark. The church bell has fallen silent for now, but the memory of its echo lingers in the air as you walk back across the green. Dusk has begun to settle, a pale wash of light fading into grey shadows. People hurry homeward, cloaks pulled close, voices low. Yet for all the solemnity of the season, there is another thread running through these days, a thread of mischief, defiance, even rebellion. The Middle Ages is a world of strict order, lords over peasants, priests over villages, fathers over households. Punishment is swift and often public. A man who steals may be set in the stocks, his shame displayed for all to see. A woman accused of scolding too loudly might find herself ducked in the river. Children are beaten for disobedience, servants fined, or worse for neglect. Authority presses down heavily here, and most days there is no escaping it. But festivals change things. For a handful of nights each year, the rigid order softens, even inverts. In towns and manors, a lord of Misrule might be appointed. a peasant or servant suddenly crowned with paper, leading games, dances, and pranks. In cathedrals, during the Feast of Fools, junior clergy, sometimes dressed as bishops or even animals, parading through the sacred space with laughter and mock ceremony. Authority watched, frowned, but often tolerated it, perhaps knowing that a little chaos made obedience easier when order returned. Here in the village, the inversion is simpler, but no less powerful. Young men slip into disguises and wander after dark, singing bawdy songs, knocking at doors, sometimes tipping over carts, or stealing small things in jest. Children play pranks, their laughter echoing through the lanes. Even the adults join in, drinking more than usual, telling jokes at the expense of those who normally command respect. For a night or two, the world tilts sideways, and people breathe easier under the weight of laughter. You pause near the stocks, set at the edge of the green. They are empty now, but you can imagine them filled. The jeering crowd throwing rotten vegetables at some poor soul. Punishment is spectacle here, a reminder to all of the rules that govern life. Yet tomorrow night, with masks and lanterns flickering, those same villagers may jeer at one another in play, their mockery a safe rebellion. Even the stocks might be draped with ribbons or mocked in drunken songs. A group of boys run past, one wearing a wooden mask with horns, another carrying a turnip lantern that swings wildly as they laugh. A woman scolds them from her doorway, but her voice lacks heat. Mischief is expected now. It is part of the season, tolerated so long as it does not cross too far into real harm. For in these moments of sanctioned disorder, people find release. They laugh at authority, mimic their betters, turn solemnity upside down, and yet there is always a line. The priest will preach sternly against such behavior, reminding the villagers that laughter too easily slips into sin. The Lord, if he hears of too much trouble, may punish those who forget themselves. Disorder is allowed, but only in its season. Once the festival passes, the world snaps back into place, with its rules, its punishments, and its hierarchy restored. You lean against a wooden post and watch as torches are lit along the green, their flames flaring in the wind. The laughter carries faintly, mixing with the rustle of trees and the distant bark of a dog. For now, the balance holds. The villagers will drink, sing, and mock. Tomorrow night, they may even crown their own small lord to lead the merriment. And for a while, the weight of punishment, of authority, will feel a little lighter. But you know, as they do, that it will not last. Come morning, the masks will be put away, the lanterns extinguished, the laughter swallowed back into the ordinary rhythm of work and obedience. That is the strange power of these festivals. They let people glimpse another world, a world turned upside down, if only for a night. By the time the sun sinks behind the hills, the village is wrapped in a deepening chill. The air grows heavy, damp with the promise of rain, and a thin mist begins to creep in from the fields. It clings to the ground, curling around fence posts, and rising in slow swirls from the ditches. Lanterns flicker uncertainly against the haze, their light swallowed almost as soon as it is born. This is the weather of the season, the weather that defines All Hallows Eve. Autumn here is not only a matter of turning leaves and fading harvests, but of skies that brood low and grey, of nights that stretch longer with every passing day. The people of the Middle Ages lived close to this rhythm, without the insulation of glass windows or central heat, the cold pressed into every corner of their lives. And without street lamps or electric light, the darkness was deeper than you can easily imagine, thick, endless, absolute. The villagers know these nights can be unsettling. Shadows seem to move where there are none. The wind howls through cracks in shutters and doors, sometimes high and keening, like voices calling from far away. The mist softens the world until familiar paths feel strange, every turn uncertain. And so the people lean on their rituals, candles lit in windows, lanterns carved from turnips, bells ringing through the night, not only for faith, but for courage. You walk slowly along a muddy path, your cloak pulled tight against the damp. The mist curls around your boots, and the sound of your steps feels muffled, swallowed by the air. Somewhere ahead, you hear the bleat of a goat, the lowing of a cow, but the shapes of barns are blurred, ghostly in the haze. You can understand why villagers believe the dead walk on such nights. The world itself seems to blur, the edges softened, the distance between the living and the unseen grown thin. A sudden gust of wind rattles through the trees, sending a scatter of leaves tumbling across the path. The branches creak overhead, their skeletal forms clawing at the sky. Rain spits briefly, cold and sharp, before easing again into mist. In the distance, thunder growls low, a reminder that storms are always near at this time of year. Weather in the Middle Ages was not only inconvenience, it was survival or disaster. A hard frost too early could ruin the crops. A wet harvest could rot grain in the fields. A storm at sea could sink a ship carrying salt or fish. People read the skies with anxious eyes, scanning for signs of what the season would bring. And in autumn, every chill wind and lowering cloud carried both fear and awe. Festivals, then, served another purpose. They gave people a way to respond to the weather, to the uncertainty of the world around them. Lighting fires on Midsummer's Eve, leaping over flames for luck, setting candles in windows on All Hallows to ward off spirits. Singing, dancing, drinking, all ways to hold back the weight of storm and darkness. To remind one another that the community was stronger than the cold, that warmth could be shared even when the nights seemed endless. You pause at the edge of the village, where the mist thickens into a pale wall. The sound of a bell rings faintly through it, steady and calm, guiding you back toward the glow of torchlight. The wind tugs at your cloak once more, carrying with it the smell of rain, smoke, and earth. As you turn toward the green again, you feel what the medieval villagers must have felt. That weather was not just backdrop, but character. A force with moods and tempers, with the power to bless or to destroy. The mist, the storm, the long night, they were not merely endured, they were faced with ritual, with festival, with every candle and song meant to push back against the weight of nature's shadow. The mist clings as you step back into the village, the torches glowing faintly through its pale veil. Laughter and song drift from a cottage where neighbors have gathered, but beneath the cheer lies another rhythm, quieter, heavier. The fear of hunger. In the Middle Ages, famine was no distant nightmare. It was a neighbor that sometimes visited uninvited, sitting heavily at the table whether there was food or not. You pause near a barn, its wooden doors barred, the harvest safely stored inside. For most villagers, what lies behind those doors will decide whether they live comfortably through the winter or face gnawing hunger. Grain sacks stacked high bring relief, even joy. But if the harvest was thin, if rain rotted the fields or frost bit too early, then every festival feast is shadowed by the knowledge that the bread may not last. A man walks past carrying a small basket of apples, their skins dull and spotted. They are the last of the season, and he guards them carefully. Behind him, a woman balances a jug of milk, its thinness betraying how little the cow can now provide. Children trail after her, whispering eagerly about the feast tomorrow. Their voices are bright, but their cheeks are hollow, their eyes already learning the weight of want. Hunger is not rare here. In some years, famine sweeps entire regions, stripping villages bare. Crops fail, animals die, prices rise beyond reach. People grind acorns into flour, boil nettles into thin soups, chew on bark and roots when nothing else remains. In the worst years, famine does not only starve, it steals strength, weakens bodies, invites illness to do the rest. And yet, festivals endure. Perhaps they matter most in times of hunger. Even when food is scarce, people find a way to share a little, to make the day different from the one before. A crust of bread blessed at the church feels heavier with meaning. A single jug of ale poured among neighbors carries more comfort than its taste alone could give. The act of feasting, even if the feast is meager, is defiance against hunger. You step closer to a cottage where stew simmers in a pot above the hearth. Inside, the smell is rich, but when you look closer, the richness is mostly smell. Water thickened with onions, cabbage, a scrap of meat hardly bigger than a coin. A child dips a crust into the broth, watching it soak, savoring the taste as though it were a treasure. His mother smiles, though you can see her eyes dart toward the pot, calculating whether there will be enough left for tomorrow. It is in this fragile balance that All Hallows finds its place. The prayers for the dead are joined with prayers for the living, for full bellies, for barns that do not run dry, for mercy in the months ahead. The candles lit in windows are not only to guide wandering souls, but to push back against the fear that hunger itself might creep closer in the dark. And so the festival is not only solemn, nor only merry, it is both. Laughter and hunger walk hand in hand. The people sing, drink, dance, and remember the dead, but all the while, their minds trace the measure of their stores. Every crumb counts, every shared bite, a reminder of both scarcity and abundance. As you watch, a neighbor passes a small loaf to another family, pressing it into the hands of a child. The mother nods in gratitude, her eyes shining. This is how they survive, not alone, but together. Hunger may threaten, famine may loom, but community tempers the blow. And in the rhythm of festivals, that truth is made visible. Joy is sweeter when it is shared, and even scarcity can be endured when no one faces it alone. The mist thickens again, and you hear the faint toll of a handbell from the church. Tomorrow night, the great bell will carry that sound across the fields, through the hunger and the fear, joining voices together in remembrance and in hope. The feast will be eaten, the ale shared, the prayers spoken, and for a little while, famine will feel less sharp, its shadow pushed back by the warmth of ritual. The torchlight glows softly against the mist as you follow the path toward a cottage at the village's edge. Through the open door, you glimpse a woman bending over the hearth, stirring a pot that hisses gently in the fire. Beside her, a child clutches her skirts, while another kneels on the floor, shaping dough into small, uneven rounds. The air inside is heavy with warmth, flour dust, and smoke. In the Middle Ages, women's hands shape nearly every corner of life. They rise before the sun to tend fires, fetch water, and knead bread. They weave and mend, tend gardens, care for children, care for animals, and keep the rhythms of the household steady. Their labor is constant, often invisible, but it is the backbone on which the community rests. As you watch, the woman lifts the pot carefully, adjusting it so the heat does not scorch the stew. She wipes sweat from her brow with the back of her hand, then crouches beside the dough the child has made. Her fingers move with practiced ease, pressing and shaping, teaching in silence what words need not say. The child's eyes follow every motion, learning not just how to bake, but how to survive. During festivals, women's work takes on new weight. It is they who bake the soul cakes for All Hallows Eve, who prepare the feasts, who ensure that even the poorest households can offer a crust to a neighbor or a child. They craft the lanterns, sew costumes from old cloaks, and tend the candles that will burn through the night vigil. Their labor fills the space where faith and survival meet. Outside, you see another group of women gathered near the green, spinning wool by hand as they talk. Their distaffs and spindles whirl in practiced rhythm, turning fleece into thread, their voices rising and falling in easy conversation. They exchange gossip about the coming feast, about children's antics, about the weather, but their hands never stop moving, turning raw fiber into something useful, something necessary. Even leisure here is bound to labor. And yet, festivals also offer women rare moments of freedom. On All Hallows Eve, some slip into disguises alongside the men and children, cloaking themselves in masks and laughter. In the misrule of the season, their roles can bend just slightly as they join the games, the songs, the small rebellions, and in church. During the vigil, their prayers rise alongside men's, equal in weight before the saints, equal in hope for the souls of the departed. You pause near a doorway where two women kneel together, braiding rushes into mats, while a lantern flickers between them. Their voices are low, but you catch snatches of song, an old tune, half hymn, half lullaby. The sound is steady, soothing, carrying into the night, like a heartbeat. It reminds you that festivals are not only about feasts and bells, they are about rhythm, about weaving the daily burdens into a pattern of meaning. And women, with their hands and their voices, keep that pattern strong. Beyond the cottages, you see a figure walking toward the church, with a basket balanced on her hip. Inside are loaves of bread, neatly stacked, their tops marked with crosses. She will leave them for the priest to bless, then share them tomorrow with those who come souling. Her step is steady, her back straight, though you can see the weariness in her face. There is dignity in her bearing, a quiet strength carried without complaint. In your world, holidays often lighten the load, offering rest from daily work. Here they add to it, doubling the tasks, pressing every hand into service. But the women do not falter. Their work is as much a part of the feast as the prayers or the ale. Without them, the festivals would not exist. As you turn away, the mist curls again around the cottages, softening the glow of the torches. You think of the countless women whose labor shaped nights like this, whose bread fed the hungry, whose songs comforted the weary, whose strength carried families through winters. Their names are rarely written in records, but their presence is etched into every loaf, every lantern, every prayer whispered against the dark. The mist drifts thinner now, torn by the movement of villagers returning to their cottages. But beyond the glow of torches, the world stretches outward into shadowy lanes and rutted tracks, roads that wind through forests and fields, connecting this small village to others beyond. In the Middle Ages, these paths are the lifelines of trade and pilgrimage, but they are also lonely, dangerous places, especially in the dark of autumn. You follow one such road for a little while, your boots squelching in the mud, where cartwheels have cut deep grooves. The air is colder here, the sounds of the village fading until only the rustle of leaves and the occasional call of an owl remain. The path feels narrow, hemmed in by hedges and trees, their branches reaching like arms into the fading light. Travel is slow in this world. A journey that might take an hour in your time could stretch into half a day here, with every mile walked on foot or rattled out on a cart, pulled by weary oxen. Roads are rough, uneven, often little more than trampled earth. In autumn, rain turns them to mud, and puddles swallow boots with every step. And yet, people travel still. Traders carry goods from village to village, salt, wool, iron, or grain. Pilgrims walk these roads with staffs in hand, bound for shrines where they hope to find healing or forgiveness. Messengers ride, bearing news for lords or churchmen. Even ordinary villagers set out to neighboring towns for feast days, for fairs, for the markets that mark the turning seasons. But danger is never far. Beyond the hedgerows, shadows shift. Bandits sometimes haunt these roads, taking what little travelers carry. Wolves prowl in winter, their howls echoing through the night. A misstep in the dark might mean a twisted ankle, or worse, with no one nearby to help. And always there is the fear of the unseen, spirits, witches, or demons said to wander on festival nights, luring travelers into the mist. You pause at a crossroads marked with a simple wooden cross planted in the earth. It leans slightly, its edges rough-hewn, a sign of both faith and fear. Crossroads are places of unease in the medieval mind, where paths and fates meet, where spirits are thought to linger. Travelers whisper quick prayers as they pass, touching the wood as though it holds back the darkness. On All Hallows Eve, the prayers are longer, the glances sharper, as though the veil is thinner here than anywhere else. In the distance, you hear the faint clatter of wheels. A cart approaches slowly, lantern swinging from its side. The driver raises a hand in greeting as he passes, his cargo covered with canvas. He hums a tune under his breath, his voice steady but quiet, as though reminding himself that he is not alone on the road. His ox plods steadily onward, the lantern bobbing until it disappears into the mist. As you stand in the quiet, you realize that travel is not only physical here, it is spiritual. Pilgrims walk not only toward shrines, but toward meaning, their feet carving prayers into the mud with every step. Traders bring not only goods but news, connecting villages with stories of distant towns and far-off lands. The roads may be dangerous, but they are also threads that weave the medieval world together. You turn back toward the village, the thought of the misty lanes lingering behind you. The torches glow faintly ahead, and you understand why festivals matter so much. For people who live in such isolation, who walk such uncertain paths, to gather together in one place, to eat and sing and pray, is a rare gift. Travel brings them to one another, and the festivals give them a reason to make the journey. The church bell tolls once again in the distance, guiding your steps. The roads stretch outward into darkness, but for tonight, your path leads back to the village, to its warmth, its noise, and the waiting festival. Night falls quickly in autumn. By the time you step back into the village, the last traces of grey sky have melted into black, and the torches glow brighter, their flames bending in the cold wind. From the cottages comes the steady hum of evening life, the crackle of fires, the murmur of voices, the clink of wooden bowls against tables. You are drawn toward one such cottage, where the door stands open, spilling light into the mist. Inside, the hearth burns bright, flames dancing on logs, while embers glow red beneath. Families gather close, drawn into the circle of warmth. Cloaks hang drying on pegs, their damp wool steaming faintly in the heat. The air is thick with the smell of stew, bread, and smoke, mingling into the unmistakable perfume of medieval life. A child sits near the fire, tracing lines in the ash with a stick. Beside him, an older man leans back, cup of ale in hand, his voice carrying over the room. He tells a story, half legend, half memory, of a saint who banished demons from a graveyard, his staff glowing in the night. As the bells rang overhead, the children listen with wide eyes, glancing toward the shuttered window as though expecting shadows to stir outside. Stories like this are the lifeblood of evenings. With no books for most, no lamps to read by, tales are carried by memory and voice. Some are religious, about saints and miracles. Others are folk stories, filled with tricksters, ghosts, and restless spirits who roam on nights like these. Still others recall real events, famines survived, storms endured, the deeds of ancestors whose names linger in the smoke of memory. Each tale keeps history alive, wrapping the past into the warmth of the present. Music weaves into the evening too. A fiddler in the corner draws his bow across the strings, the melody rough but lively. A drum beats softly in rhythm, a hand tapping against the stretched hide of an old skin. The tune is simple, but the room brightens with it. Children clap, women hum, men stomp boots against the floor in time. For a while, the shadows recede, driven back by the strength of voice and song. You notice how the songs shift with the season. Some are prayers set to melody, sung in Latin phrases the singers barely understand, but know by heart. Others are harvest songs, thanking the earth, the saints, and the Virgin for their gifts. And some, bolder, merrier, speak of ale, of mischief, of pranks played on long autumn nights. The music is not polished, but it is full of life, a reminder that even when days are hard, nights can still hold joy. By the hearth, women mend clothes by firelight, their needles flashing as they patch worn hose and cloaks. Children curl close, their heads nodding with sleep, while older folk sip their ale and share quiet conversation. The fire warms not only the body, but the spirit, a symbol of survival. Outside, the night may be dark and cold, but here there is light, heat, and fellowship. You take a seat on a bench, feeling the warmth seep into your bones. The old man finishes his tale, his voice dropping low as he speaks of prayers for the dead, of bells to be rung tomorrow night. A silence follows, heavy but peaceful, as if everyone in the room is weighing the nearness of those who have gone before. Then the fiddler strikes up another tune, quicker now, and laughter bubbles up again. The balance returns, solemnity and joy, side by side, as it always is in these festivals. The fire burns lower, casting the room in a deep red glow. Shadows leap across the walls, playing like restless figures in the half-light. Outside, the mist presses close, but within, the hearth holds firm. Stories, songs, food, and warmth. This is the rhythm of the medieval evening. This is how they wait for the festival, not in silence or fear, but in gathering, in sharing, in filling the dark with light. The fire has dimmed, its flames shrinking into glowing coals, their light pulsing faintly in the hearth. The room grows cooler, shadows thickening as families shift and settle into sleep. Children curl together beneath wool blankets, their breaths soft and steady. A mother tucks in the youngest, pulling the cloth tight beneath his chin, then sits a moment longer, gazing into the fading glow as though drawing strength from its last warmth. In the corner, a man stretches out on a rough straw mattress, the rustle of dried stalks filling the quiet. He mutters a prayer under his breath, a litany of saints' names whispered quickly, as though the words themselves form a shield against the night. When he finishes, he crosses himself, pulls his cloak over his shoulders, and closes his eyes. The cottage grows still, save for the faint crackle of embers and the occasional creak of wood in the rafters. Outside, the world is darker than you are used to, utterly black, without the glow of lamps or street lights. Only the faint gleam of stars pierces the mist, and even those are dim, swallowed by clouds. The silence is immense, broken only by the distant hoot of an owl or the bark of a dog far off across the fields. But the silence is not always comforting. In the Middle Ages, night carried its own fears. With the fire low and the village quiet, imagination stirred easily. Shadows on the walls became spirits, the groan of timber, a sign of wandering souls pressing close. People believed the veil between worlds was thin in these hours, especially on the eve of holy days. Dreams were not mere fancies, but messages, sometimes from God, sometimes from darker sources. You lie down on a rough blanket, spread across the bench, the smell of smoke and wool thick around you. The cold creeps in quickly, seeping into your fingers and toes, making you grateful for every layer of cloth. Above you, the thatch rustles faintly in the wind, a soft sighing that seems almost alive. For a moment you close your eyes, and the darkness feels vast, pressing, endless. In this world, sleep often comes in two halves. The first sleep, from evening until midnight, is deep but short. Then many wake for an hour or two, rising to tend the fire, to pray, to speak softly in the quiet hours. Some believe this time is sacred, that prayers offered in the middle of the night carry special weight. Others fear it, believing the dead walk then, slipping silently through villages before returning to their graves. Afterward comes the second sleep, carrying people to dawn. You drift with them into the first sleep. The room is filled with the sound of steady breathing, of bodies shifting slightly on straw and wood. Dreams rise easily in this space, dreams of fields, of storms, of faces long gone. For a villager, dreams may carry warnings, or comfort, or mystery. A dream of a full barn might be seen as a promise. A dream of fire as a warning, a dream of a lost loved one as proof that the soul is near. The bell in the church tower tolls once, faint but firm, marking the hour. It rolls through the night air, steadying the silence, reminding all who wake that they are not alone. The priest himself may be awake, chanting softly by candlelight, keeping vigil for the souls remembered tomorrow. The sound blends into your own drowsiness, a rhythm that carries you deeper into rest. The night presses on, heavy and still. In this darkness, the boundary between sleep and waking, between dream and prayer, between life and death, feels thinner than ever. For the villagers, this is not frightening so much as accepted. Night is a time to rest, but also a time to reckon, to remember the fragile line on which life is balanced. And so the medieval night stretches around you, cold, vast, and strangely alive. The fire glows faintly, the embers pulsing like the last heartbeat of the day. Beyond the shutters, the wind stirs, carrying with it whispers of what tomorrow will bring, bells, candles, prayers, and the solemn joy of All Hallows Eve. The first light of morning creeps faintly through the cracks in the shutters. It is a grey light, pale and cold, carrying with it the weight of autumn's chill. You stir on your bench, stiff from the hard wood, and listen as the cottage slowly wakes around you. The fire has burned down to ash, leaving only a faint warmth in the hearth. Someone stirs the embers with an iron poker, coaxing a small flame to life, and soon the smell of smoke drifts back into the air. Outside, a rooster crows, his call ragged but insistent. Dogs bark in answer, their voices carrying through the mist. The village is rousing, not with the ordinary rhythm of work, but with the expectancy of a holy day. For today is All Hallows, the feast of all saints, the time when the church calls every voice, every hand, every soul to remembrance. The children wake first, rubbing their eyes, pulling on rough cloaks against the cold. Their faces are bright with excitement, for tonight they will go door to door, singing and begging for soul cakes. Their voices will rise in the lanes, carrying prayers for the dead in return for food. Even the poorest among them will taste sweetness, however small. The adults move more slowly, their faces solemn. A woman kneels before the hearth, whispering a prayer as she kneads fresh dough. She will bake more cakes before the day is done, setting some aside for the priest to bless, others for the children who will knock at her door. Her hands work steadily, as though the act itself is part of the prayer. Beyond the cottages, the church bell tolls once, its sound deep and steady. The note hangs in the air, rolling across the fields like a summons. People pause in their tasks, lifting their heads to listen. Then one by one they make their way toward the church, cloaks pulled close, lanterns in hand. The mist still clings to the ground, curling around their boots as they walk in silence. You follow them, your steps slow on the muddy path. The church looms ahead, its doors open wide, candles glowing faintly within. Inside, the air is heavy with incense, the sweet smoke mingling with the damp chill of stone. Villagers file in quietly, crossing themselves, bowing their heads. The benches creak as they settle, the space filling with the rustle of wool and the murmur of prayers. The priest stands at the altar, his voice low but steady as he begins the mass. Latin phrases roll through the air, strange and unfamiliar to many of the villagers, but their rhythm is familiar, comforting. They kneel and rise, their movements worn smooth by repetition. A choir of boys sings faintly from the side, their voices high and clear, carrying like threads of light through the heavy air. You glance around the space, noting the faces lit by candle glow. Some are solemn, eyes closed in prayer. Others are weary, lips moving silently. A child fidgets, tugging at his mother's sleeve until she hushes him with a gentle hand. The air is thick with reverence, but also with humanity, faith and fatigue mingling in the same breath. After the mass, the people spill slowly back into the village. The green fills once more, but the mood is quieter, subdued. Today is not a feast of merriment. Not yet. It is a day of remembrance, of prayers whispered for the countless souls who wait in purgatory. Tonight, perhaps, there will be laughter, ale and cakes, but for now the village holds its breath in solemnity. The sun struggles higher, pale behind the mist, casting a weak light over the cottages and fields. The people return to their homes, their tasks, their preparations for the evening, and as you watch them move, you feel the rhythm of this holy day, a balance of grief and hope, of prayer and anticipation. The veil feels thin indeed, and the day has only just begun. The hours pass, and the grey light of morning softens into the muted tones of afternoon. The mist still hangs low across the fields, but in the village green the mood is changing. Children have begun to gather, their excitement buzzing like sparks beneath the quiet solemnity of the day. For them, the vigil is not only prayer and bells, it is also the promise of soul cakes. You watch as a group of boys chase each other around the edge of the green, their cloaks flapping behind them like wings. One carries a hollowed turnip, its jagged face grinning in the dim light. Another sings a fragment of rhyme, a souling chant passed down through generations, a request for bread, a promise of prayers, a reminder that the dead are near. His voice is high and uneven, but the rhythm is infectious. Soon the others join in, their laughter spilling into the air. Nearby, girls help their mothers shape small cakes, the dough pressed into rounds and marked with simple crosses. The smell drifts through open doors, warm and faintly sweet. Some are plain, made only of flour, water, and yeast. Others, for those who can afford it, are flavored with nutmeg or cloves, their richness carrying the scent of distant lands. Each cake carries meaning. Each cake is more than food. It is a gift, a prayer, a token of remembrance. As the cakes bake, women wrap their cloaks tighter and gather near the ovens, speaking in low voices. They share gossip, trade news, compare the number of loaves set aside. One woman boasts gently of the spices she has managed to buy. Another sighs over her thin stores of flour. Yet all are determined that their households will give something, however small, when the children knock at their doors tonight. You see a child clutching a basket, peering eagerly into its empty depths. Soon it will be filled with cakes, perhaps an apple or two, maybe even a handful of nuts, if fortune smiles. For these children, souling is both ritual and delight, a chance to taste food they might not otherwise have, a chance to join in the great cycle of prayer and remembrance. Their voices will echo through the lanes tonight, carrying both joy and solemnity in the same breath. But souling is not only for children. Some of the older villagers, too poor to feast on their own, will walk the lanes with lanterns, knocking softly at doors. They will ask not with laughter, but with humility, promising prayers for the souls of the household's dead in exchange for bread. For them, the ritual is survival as well as devotion, and those who give know that one day they too may depend on the kindness of their neighbors. The afternoon deepens, shadows stretch across the green, long and thin, as the sun sinks lower behind the clouds. The bell tolls again, steady and solemn, its voice rolling through the village like a heartbeat. Children pause in their games to listen, their faces turning briefly serious before laughter breaks out once more. The rhythm of the day is clear: prayer and play, remembrance and joy, solemnity and anticipation woven tightly together. As dusk approaches, lanterns are lit, small flickers in the growing gloom. Turnip faces glow faintly, their candlelight casting twisted shadows. The children gather in groups, baskets ready, voices eager. The adults stand nearby, watching with tired smiles, their own hearts turning toward the prayers and vigils to come. You stand at the edge of it all, feeling the moment gather like a held breath. Soon the lanes will echo with song, with knocking, with prayers traded for bread. Soon the church will fill with candles and voices. The day has been solemn, but the night ahead will be alive, with bells, with souls remembered, with the strange blend of fear and joy that marks All Hallows. The mist thickens once more, curling low around your boots. The turnip lanterns glow brighter in answer, their carved eyes gleaming like small guardians of the night. The children are ready, the cakes are baked, the prayers are waiting, and dusk is here. Darkness has settled. The mist has thickened into a low, pale fog that hugs the ground, turning familiar paths into ghostly corridors. Lanterns glow faintly in the gloom, some plain, some carved into jagged faces that leer and grin with flickering candlelight. The church bell tolls again, its deep voice rolling across the village, and with that sound the night truly begins. Children spill from cottages, cloaks pulled close, baskets swinging at their sides. Their voices rise in uneven song, half prayer, half chant, a request for bread, a promise of remembrance. Some carry lanterns, their faces bathed in golden light. Others hold only sticks or branches, tapping them against doors as they call out for cakes. Their laughter cuts through the stillness, mingling with the solemn toll of the bell, in a harmony that is strange and haunting. You follow a small group as they make their way down a narrow lane. Their boots squelch in the mud, their cloaks trailing damp along the ground. At the first cottage, they knock firmly, and sing out their lines. The door creaks open, and a woman appears, her face lit by the fire behind her. She listens patiently, then presses a small cake into each outstretched hand. The children bow their heads briefly, murmuring prayers for the souls of her family, before darting off, their laughter echoing into the fog. At another door, an old man waits with a jug of ale at his side. He chuckles at the children's song, then hands out apples, the skins dull but sweet. They promise to remember his late wife in their prayers, and for a moment his smile falters, his eyes wet in the lantern light. He nods, steps back inside, and closes the door gently. Not every household has much to give. At one, a woman hesitates, her basket of flour nearly empty. She breaks off a small piece of bread, apologizing softly, but the children accept it gladly. They know that even a crumb carries meaning, that every gift, no matter how small, binds the community together. As the children move on, you notice how the songs shift. Some are solemn, their words sharp with prayer. Others tilt toward play, with rhymes that dance like laughter. In the misty lanes, their voices sound almost otherworldly, drifting through the dark like threads of light. Villagers pause at their windows to listen, comforted by the sound even if no knock comes to their door. And so the ritual continues. Door by door, lane by lane, cakes and apples change hands, prayers are promised, and laughter rises into the night. The glow of lanterns swings through the fog, their carved faces twisting as the candles flicker. The church bell tolls again, steady as a heartbeat, binding the songs of children to the solemn rhythm of faith. For you, it feels both familiar and strange. The pattern of knocking, singing, receiving, it echoes the trick-or-treating of your own time. But here there is no costume of superheroes, no bag of sweets. Instead, there is hunger, faith, memory. Here the exchange is not only for delight, but for eternity, for prayers carried upward on children's voices, for souls waiting in the shadows of purgatory. The children's baskets grow heavier as the night deepens. Cakes stacked in layers, apples nestled against one another, nuts rattling at the bottom. They run, stumble, laugh, sing, their voices filling the mist, until it feels as though the whole village is wrapped in their sound. As you walk beside them, the fog presses close, and the lanterns glow brighter, their carved faces casting shadows that leap and dance across the walls. The air is damp and cold, but the rhythm of the night is alive. Song and bell, gift and prayer, laughter and remembrance, woven together into something both solemn and joyful. And as you watch the children knock on yet another door, their voices rising once more into the chill, you understand what the villagers feel, that this night belongs to both the living and the dead. That in every crumb of bread, in every whispered prayer, in every glowing lantern, the two worlds brush together, just for a little while. The lanes fall quieter as the children drift home, their baskets heavy, their voices fading into the mist. In their place rises another sound, the steady toll of the great bell in the church tower. Its voice rolls across the fields, solemn and deep, summoning the villagers one by one to the vigil that will last until morning. You follow the stream of figures moving toward the church. Their cloaks ripple in the wind, their lanterns swaying, their boots crunching on the damp earth. The mist parts around them, as if bowing to their passage, and the glow of the church grows brighter with every step. From its open doors spills a golden light, flickering and alive, fed by hundreds of candles set on the altar, in the aisles, along the stone walls. Inside, the air is thick with incense. The sweet smoke curls upward, catching in your throat, but softening the chill that clings to your cloak. Villagers fill the benches, pressing close, their faces lit in the warm glow. Some hold candles of their own, the wax dripping onto their fingers as they murmur prayers. Others kneel on the cold stone floor, their lips moving silently, eyes closed. The priest stands at the altar, his voice rising in chant. The Latin phrases ripple through the air, heavy and solemn. Few here understand the words, yet the rhythm carries meaning enough. A plea for mercy, a cry for remembrance, a call to heaven on behalf of the souls of the departed. Between his chants, the bell tolls again, echoing like a second voice. Together they weave a sound that is at once heavy and soothing, like the heartbeat of the night itself. You sit near the back, your eyes adjusting to the flicker of countless flames. Shadows sway across the walls, flickering shapes that seem to move and bow with the chanting. The choir of boys sings faintly from a side chapel, their voices pure and high, cutting through the smoke, and echo with something that feels otherworldly. Beside you, a woman clutches a rosary, her knuckles white, her lips whispering the name of her husband, who died the past winter. An old man kneels with his forehead pressed against the bench, whispering prayers for a child lost in infancy. Everywhere, faces are lifted, not toward the priest, but toward the unseen, toward heaven, toward purgatory, toward the thin veil they believe hovers so close tonight. Hours pass in this rhythm. Chant, prayer, bell. Chant, prayer, bell. The children who sang in the streets now sleep in their homes. But here the village keeps watch. Some drift into drowsiness, their heads nodding, then jerk awake with a start. Others whisper to one another, voices hushed but steady, but no one leaves. To keep the vigil is to show devotion, to remind the living and the dead alike that the bonds of community stretch beyond the grave. At intervals, the priest raises the censer, swinging it slowly until the smoke pours thick into the air, carrying the prayers upward. The villagers rise and kneel again. Their movements are tied, swaying in time with the bell. It is both solemn and hypnotic, a pattern that binds the night together. As you listen, you realize how much weight this ritual carries. In your world, prayers for the dead may feel like ceremony. Here they are lifelines. Each whispered word is believed to shorten the suffering of a soul in purgatory, to ease its journey into eternal rest. Each bell toll is not only sound, but action, driving back the wandering dead, guarding the village from spirits that might linger too long. The night stretches on, thick with smoke, heavy with faith. The candles gutter and flare, their light dancing across faces both weary and resolute. Outside, the wind rattles the shutters, the mist presses against the windows. But within these walls, the vigil holds strong. The living stand guard, the dead are remembered, and the church becomes a lantern against the vast dark. The candles have burned low, wax pools thick on the stone floor, hardened in rivers where it dripped and cooled through the night. The air is heavy with smoke and incense, clinging to cloaks and hair, seeping into every breath. But now, as the first pale light of dawn presses faintly through the narrow windows, the vigil draws to an end. The priest's voice has grown hoarse with hours of chant. He closes his book with slow, careful hands and lifts the censer once more, sending a final cloud of smoke curling upward. The bell tolls again, one last time, the note rolling deep and steady across the village. It is not a mournful sound now, but a closing, a completion. The prayers have been said, the candles burned, the night kept. Around you villagers stir, weary but calm. Some rub their eyes, others stretch stiff limbs, their joints cracking after so many hours on cold stone benches. A woman gathers her children, their heads lolling with exhaustion, as she pulls their cloaks tight and guides them gently toward the door. An old man leans on his staff, nodding to his neighbor as though to say, "We endured it together." The church empties slowly. Outside, the mist still clings, though thinner now, dissolving in the pale light of morning. The air is damp and cold, but the sound of footsteps and murmured voices fills the green with quiet energy. People speak softly of those they prayed for, of the bell that rang so long into the night, of the comfort found in knowing the village kept vigil as one. Back in the cottages, hearths are coaxed to life again. Bread is broken, ale is poured, children fall back into sleep against their mothers' shoulders. The day ahead will not be idle. There is always work to be done, but for a few hours, the village rests. The vigil has left them weary, but it has also knit them closer, bound by shared prayers, by the memory of faces long gone, by the comfort of having held the dark at bay together. You step onto the green and glance back at the church. Its tower rises into the pale sky, the bell within silent now, resting after its long night of labor. The candles within gutter and smoke, their flames shrinking as daylight grows. The door stands open, but fewer and fewer step inside. The vigil is complete. The living return to their lives, the dead remain remembered. The thin veil of All Hallows has thickened once more, and with that, the rhythm of the medieval year turns again. Soon the people will turn their thoughts from death and remembrance to survival and celebration. The harvest has been gathered, the stores counted, the first frosts creeping in. Winter waits just beyond the horizon, long and cold, but before it tightens its grip, another feast comes, the feast of Christmas, stretched not for a single day, but for 12 long nights of revelry, misrule, and joy. For now, though, the village breathes quietly in the pale light. The children sleep, the fields lie bare, the people rest. The vigil of All Hallows is finished, but the year is only halfway through its great cycle of festivals. The next chapter waits just ahead, ready to fill the cold months with warmth, light, and laughter. You draw your cloak tighter against the morning chill and step away from the church, following the faint sound of laughter drifting from a cottage nearby. The year moves onward, the calendar of holy days unfolding like a map through time. All Hallows has closed, but the story is far from done. The quiet of All Hallows lingers in the village for a day or two. People move a little slower, their voices softer, as though the weight of the vigil still hangs in the air. But as the days pass, the rhythm of life presses forward. The fields lie empty, the barns are stocked, and winter begins to settle its cold breath over the land. With the dark season comes another rhythm, one not only of survival, but of joy. Advent arrives first, a season of waiting, of restraint. The priest reminds the villagers of fasting, of keeping their hearts ready for the nativity. It is a time of prayers, of anticipation. Yet for the people, Advent is less about restraint than about preparation. Behind the solemnity lies the glimmer of what is to come. Christmas, the longest and loudest feast of the medieval year. You walk through the village as November deepens. The days shorten, the nights stretch long, and the frost begins to bite harder each morning. Smoke curls constantly from chimneys, and the smell of wood and peat fills the air. In the cottages, families busy themselves with small tasks that point toward the coming feast. Bread is baked and stored, ale brewed and left to ferment, dried meats hung carefully in the rafters. Even the poorest household tries to set aside something, an extra loaf, a little honey, a jug of ale, to mark the season when it comes. Unlike your world, Christmas here is not a single day of gift-giving and feasting. It stretches 12 nights, from December 25th to January 6th, spilling over with laughter, misrule, and a strange carnival-like energy. It is part holy feast, part village carnival, part winter survival ritual. People feast, sing and play games, but they also crown a lord of misrule, dress in disguises, and mock the very authorities they obey. The rest of the year, already you can sense the shift. Children laugh more readily, their games turning towards songs they will sing in the season ahead. Men discuss brewing stronger ale, their voices carrying notes of excitement. Women plan their baking, speaking of spices and dried fruits with longing. Though most know such luxuries are rare, still even a plain loaf feels richer when shared in the glow of Christmas. In the evenings, by the hearth, stories shift too. In tales of saints, give way to stories of miracles, of the Christ child born in the cold of winter, of angels and shepherds. But alongside them run folk tales of midwinter, spirits who walk in snow, animals who speak at midnight, strange figures who slip through the dark unseen. Faith and folklore walk hand in hand here, as they always do. You pause outside the church one frosty morning. The priest speaks with a small group of villagers, reminding them of Advent fasts and the need for patience. Yet even he smiles faintly when he mentions the feast to come. He knows as well as they that fasting is thin and feast is rich, and that the joy of the nativity will carry them through the hardest weeks of winter. At the edge of the green, a boy practices a carol, his voice clear but uncertain as he fumbles the Latin words. His sister joins him, laughing, correcting him when he stumbles. Soon the lanes will be filled with such voices, carrying music through the cold nights. The air itself feels like it is holding its breath. The harvest is past. All Hallows prayers have been said, and the long nights of winter stretch ahead. But on the horizon glows the promise of Christmas. Not one day, but 12 nights of fire, food, misrule, and joy. A celebration that will carry the village through the deepest dark, binding them together with laughter, as much as with prayer. And so the medieval year turns again, from death and remembrance into waiting and joy, from silence into song. The veil has lifted, and now the road ahead leads toward the nativity, toward the wild, warm heart of the winter feast. Advent has passed, and at last the nativity dawns. The church bells ring long and loud, their sound rolling across the frosted fields. Smoke curls thick from chimneys, and every hearth blazes bright. The villagers step out in their best cloaks and tunics, patched though they may be, and make their way to the church for the great Mass of Christmas Day. Inside, candles burn by the hundreds, their golden light pushing back the cold of stone walls. The choir's voices soar, rough but earnest, filling the air with hymns of joy. The priest speaks of the child born in a stable, of shepherds and kings, of light breaking into darkness. The villagers kneel, pray, and sing, their faces glowing in the flicker of flame. But once the Mass is over, the true heart of Christmas begins. Unlike in your world, where the feast may last a day or two, here it stretches for 12 long nights, spilling into January with laughter, games, and revelry. The solemnity of All Hallows feels far behind. Now the villagers crave warmth, cheer, and release. In the cottages, tables are set with whatever has been saved. A goose may roast over the fire, its skin crackling and golden. Stews bubble thick with root vegetables and scraps of salted pork. Ale flows freely from casks, poured into wooden cups that clink together as toasts are made. Even the poorest share something, bread dipped into broth, perhaps, or a bit of cheese saved for the occasion. What matters is not abundance, but sharing. Children laugh as they chase one another around the green, their hands sticky from honeyed cakes. Musicians strike up fiddles and drums, their melodies rough but lively, pulling people into circles of dance. The air fills with laughter, the smell of food and smoke, the hum of a village alive with joy. And at the center of it all is the Lord of Misrule. Each year, a peasant, servant, or even a child is chosen to wear a paper crown and command the revels. Tonight he strides through the village with a cloak of patchwork colors and a crooked staff, his voice loud, his laughter louder. He issues mock orders, commanding the elders to dance, the priests to sing, the children to sit in judgment over their parents. Everyone obeys, laughing, even as they grumble in play. The misrule is not cruelty, it is relief. For 12 days, the order of the world loosens. Authority is mocked, roles inverted, solemnity shaken. Priests frown and scold, but even they cannot stop it. The people need this brief taste of a world turned upside down, a carnival against the cold and dark. And so for 12 nights, the Lord of Misrule reigns, his laughter carrying across the frosty air. By torchlight, disguises appear. Some wear masks of wood or cloth, others cloak themselves in animal skins or tattered robes. Shadows leap and twist as they dance, the flickering firelight turning every face into something strange and new. For a moment, the village seems otherworldly, half holy, half carnival, alive with both devotion and defiance. Games fill the nights as well. Dice rattle on wooden boards, coins changing hands in the glow of lanterns. Wrestling matches spark laughter as men tumble into the mud, their cloaks splattered, their pride intact. Songs grow roadier with each cup of ale, voices rising in merry challenge to the cold outside. Children sneak small tricks, stealing cups or shouting rhymes, while adults cheer them on, their scolding turned to laughter. You watch as the Lord of Misrule leads a mock procession through the lanes, his crown askew, his staff knocking against doors. At each stop, the villagers join the laughter, offering ale, bread or song in his honor. The night swells with noise, until it feels as though the village itself is laughing, every wall, every roof, every fire joining in the carnival. This is Christmas in the Middle Ages, 12 nights of feast, prayer and misrule. It is at once sacred and profane, holy and playful, solemn and chaotic. A time when the world turns upside down, so that, when it turns back again, the burdens of life feel a little lighter. As you stand beneath the torchlight, the air thick with smoke and laughter, you feel the strange heartbeat of the season. It is not polished or tidy. It is rough, loud, messy. But it is alive, alive with hope, with joy, with the strange necessary misrule that carries people through the darkest nights of the year. The days after Christmas pass in a blur of feasting, laughter and mischief. Each night brings song and dance, each morning a slower, warier rise. Bread is broken, ale is poured, stories are told by firelight, until voices grow hoarse. The cold outside deepens, frost whitening the fields, but inside the cottages and on the green, the people hold fast to warmth. And then comes Twelfth Night, the last, the loudest, the strangest of them all. By now the villagers are well versed in the rhythm of the revels. They gather with an energy that feels almost defiant, as though determined to wring every drop of joy from this final night, before ordinary life resumes. The Lord of Misrule still reigns, his paper crown patched but proud, his voice booming above the laughter. Tonight he commands even more boldly, ordering the oldest man in the village to dance, sending children to play judge over their parents, turning the solemn into the ridiculous. No one is safe from his mock decrees, and no one truly wants to be. The laughter that follows is its own kind of medicine. At the center of the feast is the 12th night cake. In some places, it is rich with fruit and spice. In others, a simpler loaf, but always it hides a secret. Baked within is a bean or a pea, and whoever finds it in their slice is crowned for the night. Sometimes it confirms the Lord of Misrule, sometimes it chooses a new one, but always it sparks laughter and cheer. The crowned guest, be it man, woman, or child, is treated as royalty until dawn, their every whim obeyed with exaggerated reverence. You watch as the cake is sliced, the villagers leaning close in anticipation. A child pulls back, eyes wide, as her bite reveals the bean. The crowd erupts in laughter, clapping and cheering as she is lifted onto a bench, a cloak thrown over her shoulders like a queen's mantle. The Lord of Misrule bows before her, offering his crooked staff, and the people roar with delight. For this one night she rules, her small voice issuing commands that everyone obeys with mock solemnity. The feast spills outward into the night. Torches blaze, their flames snapping in the wind. Musicians play faster, their fiddles sharp, their drums pounding, pulling dancers into circles that stamp and whirl on the frozen ground. Dice rattle on boards, songs grow rowdier, mugs clink and spill. Disguises appear again, horned masks, painted faces, cloaks turned inside out. The village becomes a stage of shadows and laughter, a carnival against the cold, and beneath it all runs a thread of ritual. Twelfth Night is not only revelry, it marks the boundary. Tomorrow the feast is over, the Lord of Misrule will be uncrowned, the masks put away, the songs silenced. Ordinary order will return, the lord above the peasant, the priest above the villager, the father above the household. Work will resume, hunger will creep closer, the long winter will settle fully in, but tonight, they resist that weight. Tonight, they turn the world upside down one last time. You stand at the edge of the green as the villagers whirl in their dance, their laughter echoing into the cold air. The torches flare, the cakes are eaten, the ale flows. The crowned child sits proudly on her bench, issuing her commands with a grin, the people bowing and laughing at her every word. The Lord of Misrule leads another song, his paper crown tilting as he belts out the tune. Midnight comes, and with it, the end. The last song fades, the torches gutter, the child is lifted gently from her bench, the paper crown set aside. The villagers begin to drift back to their cottages, their steps slow, their voices soft now with weariness. The Lord of Misrule removes his crown too, his reign over. The laughter lingers, but it is fading, the feast has ended. The long nights of winter stretch ahead. But for 12 days and nights, the villagers have tasted joy, have shared bread, have turned the world upside down. And as they settle once more into silence, into cold and work and hunger, they carry with them the memory of fire, of laughter, of Misrule, a lantern to guide them through the dark weeks to come. The laughter of Twelfth Night lingers only faintly in the air as the village settles back into the rhythm of survival. The paper crowns have been cast aside, the torches burned down, the cakes eaten. The Lord of Misrule has returned to his ordinary station, his voice quieter now, his back bent again beneath the same weight as his neighbors. Order is restored, and with it comes the full weight of winter. The days are short, the sun climbing weakly above the horizon, before slipping away again too soon. Frost whitens the thatched roofs, sparkles on bare branches, hardens the mud into uneven ridges. The breath of cattle steams in the barns, their lowing filling the cold air, while smoke rises steadily from cottage chimneys, carrying the scent of peat, wood and dried dung burned for fuel. Inside the homes, life contracts around the hearth. Fires burn low but steady, their warmth precious. Families huddle close, their cloaks and blankets drawn tight, their movements slow to conserve energy. Meals are plain, stew stretched thin with onions, bread sliced small to make the loaves last, ale poured sparingly. The feast of Christmas is over. The memory of rich flavors makes the plainness sharper. You sit on a low bench near a hearth, watching as a woman slices a loaf with careful hands, measuring each piece. A child's eyes follow the knife, his hunger plain, though he says nothing. The slices are handed out, each one treasured, each bite chewed slowly. Hunger is never far in winter. The barns are stocked, but always there is fear. Fear that the stores will not last. Fear that the winter will stretch longer than expected. Work continues, though differently than in the busy months of harvest. Men repair tools, mending wooden handles and sharpening blades. Women spin wool, their distaffs resting against their shoulders as spindles whirl in their fingers. Children gather kindling, feed chickens, sweep floors. Life narrows to what is essential: warmth, food, survival. And yet there is still space for small joys. In the evenings by the glow of the hearth, stories are told once more, songs are sung, quieter now, softer, carrying comfort rather than revelry. A fiddle may strike up a gentle tune, its notes echoing faintly in the smoky room. Children doze on straw pallets, their dreams mixing the memory of Christmas with the hunger of the present. The church remains a constant presence. Bells toll not for festivals now, but for mass, for funerals, for the rhythm of ordinary devotion. The priest speaks often of patience, of faith through hardship, of the reward awaiting those who endure. For the villagers, his words are not lofty but grounding, reminders that their struggle has meaning, that suffering is shared and sanctified. Outside, the nights are long and still. Wolves prowl near the edge of the fields, their howls cutting through the silence, sending shivers through the cottages. The mist sometimes returns, curling low across the ground, making the world outside the door feel alien and vast. Few venture out after dark, save for urgent need. The fire is safer, the hearth, a shield against the endless dark. And yet, even in this hard season, the memory of festivals lingers like a faint warmth. The laughter of Twelfth Night, the solemnity of All Hallows, the feasts of Christmas, all serve as markers in the dark, proof that the year is not only toil and hunger. Ahead, more festivals wait: Candlemas, May Day, Midsummer. The cycle turns, and each holy day becomes a milestone, a promise that light will return. You glance out through a shutter, the cold air seeping in through its cracks. The moon shines faintly on the frost, the fields silvered and still. The world feels hushed, holding its breath, but within the fire crackles softly, and the rhythm of survival continues. This is the heart of medieval winter, quiet, hungry, cold, but also resilient, bound by community, strengthened by memory. The festivals have passed, but their glow remains, a lantern in the dark months that stretch ahead. The weeks after Christmas are long and heavy. Frost grips the fields, the barns grow lighter each day, and the cold creeps even into the thickest cloaks. But in early February, just as the darkness feels endless, the villagers turn to a feast that offers not feasting but light: Candlemas, the feast of the purification. The day begins quietly, the air sharp with frost that crunches beneath boots. The sun is weak, but there is a brightness in the village green, for people gather carrying bundles of candles, thick and tall if they can afford beeswax, thin and greasy if only tallow. Some are new, others saved from months past, their wicks trimmed carefully to burn again. The villagers clutch them close as they file toward the church, breath steaming in the morning cold. Inside, the stone walls glow with a golden shimmer. Dozens of candles are already lit, their flames steady and warm against the grey of winter. The priest blesses each new candle, sprinkling holy water, his voice carrying in solemn chant. The air is filled with the mingling scents of beeswax and incense, a sweetness that softens the chill and seems to press the darkness outward. The people believe these candles hold power. Once blessed, they will be carried home and kept safe, burned during storms to guard against lightning, lit in times of illness to ward off death, set in windows to push back evil spirits. In a world so bound to shadow, fire is not only warmth, but protection, its glow a small fortress against the unknown. You watch as a woman presses a blessed candle into her child's hands, the flame reflected in his wide eyes. For him it is not only light, it is safety, hope, a promise that the long winter will not last forever. Nearby, a man clutches 3 candles, muttering that one will guard his house, one his animals, and one his own body should fever strike. The villagers may be poor, but in these small flames, they hold wealth greater than coin. After the Mass, the people carry their candles back through the frost, their steps slow, their voices low. Some place them in windows at once, their glow flickering against the mist. Others tuck them carefully into corners, saving them for the moments when darkness feels heaviest. The sight of so many small flames glowing across the village makes it seem for a moment like the night itself has been broken apart. The day is not all solemnity. Candlemas also marks the midpoint of winter, a turning point. People speak of weather signs. If the day is bright, winter may yet linger, but if it is grey, spring will come soon. Farmers glance at the sky, muttering proverbs about sun and shadow, measuring their hope against the fickleness of the season. For them, the blessed candles are not only symbols, but promises that the earth will wake again. In the evening, cottages glow brighter than usual. Candles burn in hearths and windows, their steady flames warding off the long night. Families sit close, the wax dripping slowly, the air filled with a warmth that feels different than firewood alone can offer. Children watch the flames with drowsy eyes, while elders tell stories of saints who carried light into dark places, their voices low and reverent. You sit near one such flame, its glow steady against the draught that slips through the shutter. Outside, the night presses close, but within the candle shines on bread, on hands, on faces lined with both weariness and strength. For a little while, the fear of famine, of cold, of death, feels softened, the light is stronger. And so Candlemas passes, quietly, reverently, but with a glow that lingers long after the last flame gutters out. The candles will be kept all year, ready to blaze against storm and sickness. And the villagers stepping into the hardest stretch of winter will remember that even in the darkest season, there is always a spark to guide them on. Winter lingers long, but at last the earth softens. Frost fades, buds swell on branches, and the first green shoots break through the soil. The villagers breathe easier, their shoulders lighter as the fields wake again. And with the new season comes one of the brightest, most joyful festivals of the medieval year, May Day. The morning begins with laughter. Before dawn, groups of young men and women slip from their cottages and vanish into the woods, seeking flowers, branches, and greenery. Their voices echo through the trees, songs half sung, half shouted, as they gather hawthorn blossoms, weave garlands, and cut boughs of birch to carry back. By sunrise, the village is alive with color, doorways draped in flowers, windowsills bright with garlands, maypoles raised high in the green. The maypole is the heart of it all, a tall, straight trunk, planted firmly in the ground, its crown tied with ribbons or garlands. Children clutch the ribbons, weaving in and out in dizzying circles as laughter rings across the green. The pole sways slightly as they run, its ribbons twisting into patterns of bright color. The dance is wild, imperfect, but full of life, a symbol of spring's renewal, of the earth itself dancing back into fertility. Everywhere, there is music. Fiddles and drums, flutes carved from reeds, voices raised in song. The tunes are quicker now, lighter, carrying the rhythm of spring. Dancers stamp their boots on the grass, circle arm in arm, leap and spin, until they tumble laughing into the soft earth. The old join in too, their steps slower, their voices hoarse, but their smiles just as bright. Food appears, simple but abundant compared to the lean weeks of winter. Fresh bread from the first milling of new grain, soft cheese, honey spread thick on loaves, jugs of ale, carried and passed from hand to hand. Children chew on apples, their juice running down their chins, while men drink deeply, their laughter louder with each cup. For once no one counts carefully. On this day the earth has given back, and the people celebrate without restraint. You pause near a group of girls, weaving crowns of flowers. They place them on one another's heads, laughing at the crooked fits, then run to crown the men, who grumble playfully, before breaking into grins. A boy darts past, with a garland slung around his neck, chased by a friend who threatens to dunk him in the pond. Mischief runs high today, but it is welcomed, part of the carnival mood that loosens the strict order of life. Not all of May Day is play. For many, the festival carries deeper meaning. Couples slip away into the fields, their hands twined, their laughter soft as they vanish into the green. May Day is a festival of fertility, as much as joy, and the earth's awakening is mirrored in the hopes of new love, of children yet to be born, of futures shaped by laughter and spring. As the sun climbs high, the green is filled with dancing, singing, and games. Wrestling matches spark cheers, dice rattle on wooden boards, riddles and songs challenge quick minds. The air is thick with the scent of flowers, the smoke of cooking meat, the sweet tang of ale spilled on the grass. Everywhere is color, noise and movement, a carnival of spring. By evening the light softens, the garlands wilt, and the people grow tired. Some sleep on the grass, flowers still in their hair, while others wander homeward arm in arm. The maypole stands tall in the fading light, its ribbons tangled and twisted, a monument to a day of joy. You stand at the edge of the green as dusk falls. The laughter fades, the fires burn low, but the scent of flowers still lingers in the air. May Day has passed, but its brightness remains, a memory to carry into the long days of summer. For in this world of toil and shadow, such bursts of joy are not luxuries, they are lifelines. The wheel of the year turns, and the days grow long. By June the sun lingers late in the sky, its golden light spilling over fields, thick with green. The air is warm, the earth heavy with promise, and the villagers turn to one of the oldest, most vibrant festivals of the medieval calendar, Midsummer's Eve. As the sun sinks low, people gather on the village green, carrying bundles of wood, straw, and brush. Soon great heaps of fuel rise into tall mounds, waiting for the spark. Children race about, tossing sticks onto the pile, their laughter sharp against the warm air. The smell of cut grass and flowers drifts from the fields, mingling with the sharp tang of smoke as fires are lit. When darkness finally falls, the bonfires blaze high. Flames roar upward, sparks spinning into the night sky like stars. The villagers circle close, their faces lit orange, their shadows leaping and bending in the firelight. The warmth presses against their skin, a shield against the dark, but the fire is more than comfort, it is protection. For in the medieval mind, fire on Midsummer's Eve drives away evil spirits, witches, and sickness. It blesses the fields, ensuring the harvest will come, and guards the people through the turning of the year. You watch as men leap through the flames, their boots sending sparks flying. Women laugh and chase them, daring one another to follow. Children are carried by the hand and led around the bonfire, their small faces glowing in awe. Each leap, each circle is a charm, a promise of health, luck, and fertility. The fire crackles, alive with both faith and play. Music swells. Fiddles, flutes, and drums beat quick rhythms that drive the dancers into faster circles. Garlands of flowers crown heads, their petals already wilting in the heat. Ale flows freely, mugs raised and spilled, laughter rising higher with every song. The air feels thick with joy, with release, with a strange wild freedom that only comes when fire blazes against the dark. But alongside the revelry runs the whisper of magic. Midsummer, people say, is a night when the veil between worlds grows thin, not with solemnity, as on All Hallows, but with mischief and wonder. Herbs gathered at midnight are said to carry healing power. Dew collected at dawn is believed to bring beauty and strength. Lovers slip away into the fields, believing the night itself will bless their unions. Some speak of fairies wandering the hedgerows, their lights glimmering faintly in the mist. You follow a group of young women as they walk to the edge of the field, their hands clutching sprigs of St. John's wort and fern. They whisper charms as they lay the herbs beneath their pillows, hoping to dream of the men they will one day marry. Their laughter is soft, nervous, full of both faith and play. They glance often toward the flicker of the fires, as though the flames themselves are listening. Back at the green, the fires burn lower, but the people dance still. The priest watches from the edge, frowning faintly, but saying little. He knows these rituals run older than the church, rooted deep in the land and its people. So he blesses the crowd, sprinkling holy water toward the flames, sanctifying what cannot be erased. Faith and folklore mingle in the night air, neither one wholly yielding to the other. By dawn the fires are ash, their smoke rising faint into the brightening sky. The villagers stumble home weary, but smiling, garlands tangled in their hair, their clothes smelling of smoke and ale. The fields glisten with dew, the first birdsong piercing the stillness. And though the fires are gone, the people believe their warmth remains, woven into the soil, into their bodies, into the harvest yet to come. You stand at the edge of the green, the last embers glowing faintly behind you. The midsummer sun rises, bright and strong, promising long days still ahead. But in the memory of the night's fire, you feel the heart of the festival, a moment when darkness was chased away, when fire turned fear into laughter, when the people stood together in a circle of light. The long days of summer pass, and the earth begins to shift once more. The sun lowers earlier, its heat gentler now, its light slanting golden across the fields. Grain ripens, bending heavy on the stalk, and the air fills with the rustle of harvest. The great circle of the year is turning, and every villager knows it. Men swing sickles in wide arcs, their movements steady, practiced. Women gather sheaves into bundles, their arms aching but sure. Children scurry along the edges, picking up fallen stalks, their laughter mingling with the creak of carts and the hum of work songs. The village lives or dies by these weeks. If the barns are filled, winter can be endured. If the fields fail, hunger waits close at hand. When the first grain is brought in, the villagers pause to celebrate llamas. the feast of the first loaves. Bread is baked from the new crop, and a portion is blessed in the church, given back to God in gratitude. The taste is different, fresh, rich, carrying the promise of survival. People tear the bread with reverence, their mouths full not only of food, but of relief. As the harvest continues, the rhythm of life shifts. The green fills with piled sheaves, the barns with grain, the air with the smell of apples ripening, and hops drying for ale. The work is relentless, but joy flickers at its edges. Songs rise as bundles are stacked, mugs of ale passed between weary hands. There is pride in the labor, pride in knowing that the fields have given enough. With harvest comes feast. Villagers gather on the green, their tables laden with bread, cheese, apples, and meat. If fortune allows, ale flows, voices rise, fiddles play, and for a night, the toil is set aside. Children race between benches, women laugh as they wipe flour from their hands. Men boast of the yield of their fields. The feast is not lavish, but it is rich with meaning. Every bite is a victory, every toast a prayer of thanks. And yet, even here, in the glow of fire and feast, the villagers feel the weight of what is coming. The nights grow longer, the air cools, biting at the edges of their cloaks. The leaves turn gold, then brown, then fall, leaving the trees bare against a grey sky. The cycle of work has carried them from spring's promise to summer's fullness, to autumn's reward, but always winter waits ahead. As you sit at the edge of the harvest feast, the sound of laughter and song drifting around you, you feel the cycle closing. The festivals of life and light are giving way to those of shadow and remembrance. Soon the church bell will toll again for All Hallows. Soon lanterns will flicker against the mist. Prayers will rise for the dead, and the year will turn back to solemnity. The villagers know it too. They sing, they feast, they laugh. But beneath it all runs the steady knowledge that this joy is fleeting, that the harvest is the last brightness before the long night. The rhythm of the year is not broken. It moves steady as the toll of a bell, carrying them onward into shadow. And so as autumn deepens, the harvest feast fades, and the village once more begins to prepare, not for plenty, but for endurance, not for laughter, but for remembrance. The wheel turns, and All Hallows draws near. The fields lie empty once again. The grain is stored, the apples pressed, the leaves fallen. Smoke hangs low over the cottages, and the air carries the bite of winter's breath. In the village green, torches flicker against the mist, and the sound of the church bell rolls once more across the land. The cycle has turned, and All Hallows is here again. It feels both familiar and changed. You walk the same lanes, past the same cottages, yet the year has left its mark. The children are taller now, their games more boisterous, their voices louder as they gather with baskets in hand. Their laughter rings against the fog as they prepare for souling, their lanterns carved once again from hollowed turnips, their songs a blend of prayer and play. Inside the cottages, women press dough into small cakes, marking each one with a cross before sliding it onto the hot hearth. The smell fills the air, warm, faintly sweet, mingling with the sharper tang of smoke. The cakes are smaller this year, perhaps, but they are no less precious. Each one carries the weight of prayer, the promise of remembrance. The men stand near the church, speaking in low voices as they share mugs of ale, their faces aligned with the wear of harvest labor. But tonight their eyes are softer, turned toward memory. They speak of fathers and mothers, of neighbors lost, of children gone too soon. Their words carry the solemnity of the season, yet also the comfort of community, that in speaking, in remembering, the dead are not lost. The priest moves among them, blessing candles, sprinkling holy water, reminding them of the vigil to come. His voice is calm, steady, grounding. The great bell tolls again, its sound deep and resonant, calling the people to prayer. The villagers bow their heads, some whispering names under their breath, others silent, their thoughts carried upward with the smoke. As dusk deepens, the ritual begins once more. Children knock on doors, their songs rising into the fog. Candles burn in windows, their glow a guide for wandering souls. The church fills with voices chanting in Latin, the air thick with incense, the villagers' prayers rising in rhythm with the toll of the bell. Laughter and solemnity mingle, faith and fear walk hand in hand. The living and the dead are remembered together. You stand among them, the rhythm of the year clear in your bones now. All Hallows is not only a night of prayer, it is a reminder that life is fragile, that community endures, that every feast, every fast, every song and silence is part of a greater cycle. The same hands that danced at May Day, that leapt the midsummer fire, that raised bread at harvest, now clasp in prayer for the dead. The mist thickens, the candles glow brighter, the bell tolls on. The festival is both ending and beginning, a point in the wheel where life and death meet. And as the night stretches ahead, you feel the weight of the medieval year settle into its rhythm, toil and feast, joy and grief, light and shadow. The cycle is complete, and yet it begins again. All Hallows is here, and tomorrow will come, and the wheel will keep turning. The mist drifts low, the bell tolls, and you realize the year has come full circle. From the dim hush of All Hallows to the riot of Christmas, from the bright garlands of May Day to the roaring fires of midsummer, back again to the solemn prayers of autumn. The medieval year is not a line, but a wheel. Each festival is a spoke, holding life together, keeping despair at bay, giving shape to time. For the people of this world, these holy days are more than leisure. They are lifelines in a life of hard labor, hunger, and uncertainty. Festivals carve out space for joy, for memory, for community. They are moments when the veil between life and death feels thinner, when laughter and prayer rise side by side, when the weight of survival is softened by song and fire. Each season carries its festival. In winter, Christmas stretches 12 nights long, its laughter and misrule pushing back the deepest dark. In spring, May Day bursts with flowers and dances, celebrating the earth's renewal. In summer, midsummer's fires blaze against the night, their smoke curling like a shield over field and village alike. And in autumn, All Hallows reminds the people that life is fragile, death is near, but neither breaks the bond of community. You picture the children running with lanterns, the women shaping soul cakes, the men leaping midsummer fires, the priests chanting before candlelit altars. Each moment belongs not only to its season, but to the whole woven together in the fabric of the year. Festivals are not escapes from life. They are life made visible, made communal, made sacred. The bell tolls again, steady and deep, and you feel the rhythm of it in your chest. It is the same rhythm that runs through the year itself: solemnity, joy, work, rest, feast, hunger. The villagers live within that rhythm, and so do you, listening, watching, carrying their stories forward. As the night deepens, you step back into the mist. The candles burn in cottage windows, their flames steady, their light a promise. Tomorrow will bring work again, and hunger, and cold. But tonight, the village gathers, remembers, and endures. The medieval year has turned once more. Its festivals have carried the people through, as they always will, until the wheel turns again.